Ray Flores joined alongside by Bjorn Rebney, the Bellator CEO. They kick off another season, Bellator 60, happening this upcoming Friday from the Horseshoe Casino in Hammond, Indiana. Bjorn, thanks so much for your time. Let's talk about kicking off Bellator 60 from 1 to 60. Tell us about the ride.
It's been a good ride. It's been a fast ride. It's been 3 years. It started off on ESPN Deportes. It moved its way to FSN, and now we got this dream deal with MTV Networks and Viacom, soon moving to Spike. So it has been a shockingly fast ride, but I love where that road has taken us.
Let's talk about the main event. Pat Curran battles Joe Warren for the Bellator Featherweight Championship. It's been a fight that's been talked about for quite a while. Now it happens at Bellator 60.
Yeah, great fight. Unbelievable fight. Curran has been kind of the poster boy, if you will, for Bellator. Give a guy an opportunity, a world-class fighter, and he will take advantage of it. Curran fought for our lightweight title, looked amazing standing toe-to-toe with Eddie Alvarez for 5 rounds, and then dropped down to what was really his right weight at 45, and has just looked unbeatable. His knockout of Marlon Sandro in the last tournament to earn this shot was one of the best knockouts of the year. The guy is, in my mind, probably one of the top 3 or 4 featherweights on the face of the earth. And what can you say about Joe Warren? Just a consummate battler. He's just got heart and soul, unbelievable wrestling ability, been a great champion for us. He's got his hands full, but Pat's got his hands full too. As that fight goes deeper in, as we get deeper into the fight, wow, Joe Warren shines as you get into the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round. So, tough fight. It'll be real interesting to see how that thing plays itself out. It's a fight that I was wildly excited about making, and to kick off our season with it just made all the sense in the world.
What does it mean for you to kick off Bellator 60 so close to home at the Horseshoe Casino in Hammond, Indiana? Your offices are based here in the Chicagoland area. Has to mean a lot for you not to be able to have to fly or jump on a plane to get to the next event.
Yeah, we've got 25 events coming up before Thanksgiving, and to be able to kick off, there's a lot that, as you know, there's a lot that goes in to that premier show. Once you get into 2, you get some of the bumps and bruises off, and 3 and 4, you start to really smoothly glide. But boy, that first show, a lot of work, and to be in your own backyard, have your full team here, not have to jump on planes, and just be able to drive in, it's magic. It was done intentionally. This wasn't by mistake. But this is, hopefully Horseshoe ends up being a home for us for years to come.
Now let's discuss this upcoming season of Bellator. A lot of interesting title matchups. Doug Lima along with Ben Askren. That should be a war, and so many other enticing matchups on the horizon for Bellator.
Yeah, unbelievable matchups. God, the Lima fight, Lima goes from being, the #1 prospect in the world to being literally a top 10 guy on most people's lists. Dantas versus Makovsky, that's an incredible fight. Dantas was the same way. He was the top prospect in the world, and now suddenly he's busted into a lot of people's top 6 and 7. So, that's really what we're all about. Formulaically, that's what we do. We take guys from nothing, world-class fighters, and establish them in a very short period of time. So the Makovsky fight versus Dantas, the Lima fight versus Ben Askren, that's kind of an old-school MMA fight. Mm-hmm. Ben's going to try to take him down, put him on his back, and Lima's going to try to keep it standing and try to knock him out. So great fights. What about the Eddie fight versus Shinya Aoki? That's a great fight. So it's exciting. We got a lot loaded into the gun in terms of what's going to happen over the next 3 months.
Speaking of Eddie Alvarez, there was talk and some rumors that he was going to go ahead and filter to the UFC. Then the fight with Aoki was made. What happened there? Was that just rumors, or can you explain and expound on that situation with Eddie Alvarez?
Boy, Eddie's been with us 4 years. Eddie was the first big name I ever signed through Monty Cox. That was 4 years ago. And, the contract was coming up to an end. And Ed obviously wanted and needed a big win over Mike Chandler to try to put himself in position to negotiate with us and or negotiate with the UFC. It didn't work out that way for him. And he asked me after the fight, he said, will you stand by what you said and get me the Shinya Aoki fight? I said, absolutely. Ed's been part and parcel of this organization since its kickoff. He's just got a heart and soul that just won't quit. He's a great human being. I love him and his family. So still made the fight. And it's a great fight for Ed because he's jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. But if he wins that fight, he reestablishes himself at an elite high level. You talk about Philly fighters. Ed Alvarez is the consummate Philly fighter. In Webster's, if it said Philadelphia fighter, you should have a picture of Ed Alvarez.
I completely agree with you. Speaking of Eddie Alvarez, what is his contract situation? Is there one more fight left on his deal? And then are you guys negotiating right now to bring him back?
Yeah, there's a couple of fights left on Ed's deal right now. I think we've got about 7 or 8 more months left on the deal. I know his sole focus right now is Aoki, which it should be, because Aoki is about, I think it's kind of generally accepted, the most dangerous guy on the ground at 155 in the world. So Ed's got his hands full. He wins that fight. We'll sit down with him. We'll keep talking. But right now, all the conversations have just been, dude, focus on Aoki. and then we'll talk about everything else later.
Well, talking about contract situations, Hector Lombard is your middleweight champion. Dana White said out in Sydney prior to fight night that he would love to have Hector Lombard inside the UFC and that there was talk of one more fight being left on his deal. What is the status of your middleweight champion?
Yeah, who wouldn't want Hector Lombard to be fighting in their middleweight division? I think he's the best middleweight in the world. I think he beats anybody on earth right now. He's just his punch.
Anderson Silva also?
Yeah, I think he beats Anderson Silva. I mean, you know, it's just objectively, and I know it generates arguments, and as fight fans, we can go back and forth. I just think his punching power is unparalleled at 185 pounds. Nobody can stand with him, and anybody that tries to, whether it's a great fighter from the UFC or a great fighter from Bellator, you're going to go to sleep. His jiu-jitsu, I mean, his judo is world-class. Obviously, he was an Olympian in Cuba. And his jiu-jitsu is unbelievable as well. His balance, his base, I mean, it's just all the pieces. He's got an unbelievable chin. I mean, it's just, he's got every piece of the equation, and he's young, and he's in the prime of his career. So we're negotiating with him right now. I would assume the UFC would want him, anybody in the world would want him who has any kind of fight organization. He has that one intangible that everybody looks for, and that's one-punch knockout power. He has a Tyson-esque air about him, so he's a talent. Also a great guy. I signed him 4 years ago, and the full extent of our deal is run, and we're negotiating with him now.
Now, Bjorn, MMA Uncaged magazine is based out of the UK, and there are a lot of people, every time I go over to England to do an event and to write and to talk to people out there, they always ask, when is Bellator going to be on in the UK and in Europe? When can we watch Bellator live? Can you give us an idea of when that can happen?
Man, my hope would be very, very soon. You know, we just signed a 5-year deal with Fremantle to handle all of our international television distribution, and they've been working like dogs. They're based in the UK. David Ellender, who heads the company, is based in London, so they've been working very hard to put together the right TV deal for us in the UK, and I hope it comes. I mean, the tweets that I get more often than any are from fans in the UK and fans in Brazil. And we're probably a week away from making the announcement on the Brazil deal, which has finally come together. But the UK, we're still working on it. And it's just, you know, every single day I send them emails and I talk to them about it and say, hey, what can we do? Can I jump on a plane? Can we help? Because it's an incredibly important market for us. We just haven't gotten it done yet.
Can fans watch it online, or do they have to resort to watching YouTube videos of fans when they post a couple of days later on YouTube?
Yeah, well, I would never recommend that. But
well, yeah, obviously, but I mean,
yeah. You know, the Spike.com show will continue with obviously some great fights pre and post fight, but for the meat on the bone, for the major fights, for our tournament fights, and then for the Warren Curran fight and Askren Lima and everything else, we still got to wait and put a TV deal together.
Well, we look forward to seeing that happen. And finally, Bjorn, can you give us an idea? You know, the tournament format is so special to Bellator. That's what makes Bellator what it is today. Who are some of the young stars that we're going to see emerge? Pat Curran emerged 2 years ago. Who are some of those guys that are going to emerge in this season of Bellator? Man,
it's a great question. I mean, I get asked that all the time. Who's the next Mike Chandler? Who's the next Eduardo Dantas? Who's the next Douglas Lima? Who's the next Pat Curran? You know, right now, who knows? If you'd asked me going into the last 35 tournament, if Eduardo Dantas was going to be so dominant and was going to end up establishing himself as one of the better 35-pounders in the world, I would have said maybe. And I don't know. I mean, there were 3 other guys that I looked at and thought maybe it'll be Alexis Villa who will establish himself at a late stage in his career is unbeatable. And boy, he looked like it coming out against Joe Warren in the first round of that tourney. It's just... It's so tough to pull them out because now the level of guys that we're recruiting and signing has gotten so high that where there used to be a number 1 in each weight class going into each tournament and a number 8, and there was no question but that number 1 was the prohibitive favorite. Now there's 5 or 6 guys that you look at and you think any one of these guys could win this tournament. It's kind of a pick'em situation. So I'm not trying to avoid the question, but I have no idea. And it's a great position to be in to have no idea because it means that the level has gone up so much.
And finally, Curran Warren, who do you favor?
That's an incredibly tough call. Pat Curran has looked obviously unbelievable. I mean, his knockout win over Marlon Sandro was just one of the best knockouts I've ever seen, and it's not. And Marlon Sandro at the time was ranked number 5 in the world, and is back and is probably going to be fighting at a top 5 or 6 level. His victories at 55 for us and 45, it's just been, I mean, he's looked like the consummate, full, well-rounded mixed martial artist. Joe Warren, as you get into deeper water, he gets tougher and tougher. His wrestling is amongst the best in the world at 145 or 35. Very tough call. I mean, you'd have to say from a striking perspective, standing, Pat's got a distinct advantage. On the ground, Curran's jiu-jitsu has elevated and elevated and elevated. You saw it in the Luis Palomino fight.
Absolutely.
That was just the Peruvian necktie that he pulled off. Literally looked like he was just working through it with his cousin Jeff in the gym. I mean, it was so calm and no laboring. Man, I don't know. I mean, I would have to assume if it ends early, it will probably be a fight that Pat walks away with the belt. But if it goes into the third, fourth, and fifth round, Warren just gets, literally you can see Joe Warren when he walks into the cage, he gets taller and bigger as the rounds go on. Each round goes by, Warren gets tougher and tougher. So I'll never bet against Joe Warren.
Well, Bjorn, thanks so much for your time. We'll see you on Friday night, and good luck in this upcoming season of Bellator.
Thanks, man.
Bellator CEO and Chairman Bjorn Rebney joining us here.